Hey everybody, it's Kairos. A really common issue I've seen in low elo games is the inability to close out leads. We've all been there, where we get a lead in the early game, things are going good, but then the game drags on, your teammates keep getting picked, and before you know it, the enemy team is in your base hitting the Nexus. Today I wanted to go over a few ways you can push your leads and close out games before your 2-0 Yuumi gets too hyped and tries to 1v5. If you enjoyed this video and it's helpful for you, I'd love for you to subscribe to see more, and let me know in the comments what kind of videos you'd like to see me make in the future. Now, let's talk about closing out games. These first 3 tips are specific to lane phase, and then the rest of them will be helpful for you after lane phase. So the first tip for snowballing the early game is to capitalize on teamfight wins. If you win a team fight and then immediately go back to farming your jungle, you're throwing away an opportunity to snowball. So after a team fight win, ask yourself, what else can we take while the enemy is dead? If the fight was in a lane, you should almost always push in a turret and definitely drop Herald if you have it. Crashing the wave will deny gold and XP to the enemy and will also make the next wave push back to your teammate. And if you get the full turret, then your teammate can start roaming around the map with you, forcing plays, and it really just accelerates the game overall. Another option is, if you're healthy enough and you have help, you can either take Rift Herald or Drake if they're up. And then another option after teamfight win is if there are no objectives nearby, you can go counter jungle, which I actually made a video on this recently, and so you can go check that out to help optimize that part of your game. And then one last option is to just reset for tempo. If there's nothing else on the map, it can be a really good use of your time to reset, spend your gold, and get back out onto the map before the enemy even respawns, because you're going to be quite a bit stronger than them. And the important part of capitalizing on teamfight wins is to not get greedy and try to take too much. Otherwise, the enemy will come up off their death timers and run you down, and then you'll end up throwing away the lead that you had. My second tip for building leads is to play around Rift Herald. I think this is probably the most underused tool for snowballing leads. In the lane phase, it's going to guarantee at least 320 gold if it hits turret plates. Usually it'll get you a lot more than that. It's easy to solo and it creates huge amounts of map pressure if used correctly. But for whatever reason, it seems like a lot of people in low elo undervalue it, or they don't understand what it can do, or they just completely ignore it. If used after a teamfight win especially, you can push all the way to an inhibitor turret pretty easily with your team. My friend Bequipped actually made a video to demonstrate how easy it is to take Rift Herald quickly and without losing a lot of health on pretty much any champion. Doesn't matter if you're melee, ranged, tank, support, or a cat riding a book. You can literally take Herald with any champion if you have lane priority. Be sure to check out his channel for tips on clearing Herald, and also I made a video on how to use Herald efficiently after you do capture it, so you can check that out right here. My third tip for snowballing the early game is to counter jungle. If the enemy team commits multiple members to one side of the map and you can't respond, you need to counter jungle. If your team's ahead, they more than likely can at least stay safe, maybe trade kills, and possibly even turn it around on the enemy. If you try to run all the way across the map, the fight's already going to be decided by the time you get there. Instead, you should use the opportunity to counter jungle. It's important to punish the weak side of the map so that you don't give the enemy any room to catch their breath, farm, or stay relevant in the game. Now into the tips for closing out games after lane phase. The first tip is to match reset timers. If you see a majority of your teammates recalling, you should definitely take a recall at that same time, even if you don't have a ton of gold to spend. If everyone's waiting for their next item spike before resetting, you're never going to be synced up and ready for a fight. Not syncing back timers is actually the second leading cause of people getting picked, the first course being that full AP blitzcrank, bush camping, and control ward. But if you greed for another item and your team loses a fight because you're not there, it's partially your fault. You want to farm when your teams are farming, and you want to group when they're grouping. The next way to close out games is to push the right lanes. In this example, your team has taken the bottom inhibitor. You already have super minions pushing the wave, so it's really redundant to pressure that lane. Instead, it's better to group on the top turret and use the pressure from the super minions. The enemy team will have to answer that push and send somebody down there, and you'll have a 5v4 opportunity on the opposite side. The next tip is to fight around number advantages. It sounds pretty obvious that you want to look for fights where you have more teammates present, but there are a few ways to set this up. First, you can set up deep vision around a spawning objective to get an easy pick and win the fight before it even starts. Also, you can force a fight when an enemy shows on the opposite side of the map, kind of like in the last example. Getting a pick will almost guarantee any team fight win if the enemy tries to contest you. My last tip for closing out games is communicate. And I know it sounds cheesy, but it's really important in the late game. If you have a strong split pusher with TP, tell your team to go 4 bottom, 1 top with TP. Tell your team what you want to do and why. Don't expect them to read your mind and know what you want to do. If you snowball the early game, to that point, they'll probably listen to you. That wraps up the video for today. Thanks for watching to the end. Comment below if there's something new that you learned, and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this in the future. That's it for now. I'll see you later.